recorded, and we'll be sharing out the recording and the slide deck from today's presentation with you all in the next week or so. So please do look out for that. It's going to be a great conversation. I know you'll want to revisit it in the future. Just getting into today's agenda. Again, my name is Jules Epstein Hebert. If you do have questions or comments and you want to ask the panelists or the speakers, please do so. Feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat, or you can use the Q&A tool. We do hope to save time for audience discussion towards the end of today's presentation. Again, we will be sharing the recording and the slide deck with you all. Really excited to be joined today by our guest, Jim Nussle from America's Credit Unions, as well as our own board member, serving as a moderator today, James Hunter from New Orleans Firemen's FCU. And then, of course, our CEO, Cathie Mahon, will be joining the discussion as well. Welcome to you all. It's been a couple months. For those of you who were at the annual conference in NYC last month, thank you for joining us. It was a really great time. For those of you who didn't make it, please do pencil in, and I'm giving you a little bit of a preview to later on, but pencil in April 28th, 2025. That's when we'll be in Cleveland for the 51st. It's going to be even better than the 50th anniversary conference with Inclusiv. And then if you are interested in the latest updates from Inclusiv, of course, our website is constantly being updated with the latest information, latest resources that you can take advantage of. So please do check back regularly at inclusiv.org, and welcome to you all. Now, I just have a brief network update. First of all, this is related to CDFIs. I just wanted to highlight for many grant recipients, CDFI grant recipients, your transaction level reports and your compliance reports are due at the end of June. Inclusiv has signed on. First of all, we've provided transaction level report templates to those who've requested it. If you think you should have received it, you haven't received it, or maybe you still need to request it, my contact information is at the last slide on this deck, but please do reach out to me. We'd be happy to get you set up this week. Inclusiv also signed on with our partners at the CDFI Coalition, the National CDFI Coalition, on a letter to the CDFI Fund seeking some clarity and additional information around some questions we had around the new certification standards. So we're going to be maintaining open communications with the CDFI Fund over the coming weeks. We're also going to be sharing updated information with you all through emails and also through our CDFI office hours, which are Wednesday. We'll share more information on that a little bit later. But Inclusiv will be continuing to provide updates around the new CDFI standards, the new certification process, and also requesting an extension around some of the deadlines that are coming up. So again, please do keep your inboxes open for information and check in on those Wednesday afternoon calls if you have questions or would like to learn more about the CDFI updates. Now, I think without further ado, I'd like to invite our moderator, James Hunter, to the floor to talk a little bit about our upcoming conversation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jules. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone, and greetings. Thank you for joining today's town hall conversation. And as you all have heard, I'm James Hunter, proud board member of Inclusiv. Also work for New Orleans Firemen's Federal Credit Union. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer. But I am thrilled by today's talk. I'm joined by two of the most dynamic people in our industry who need no introduction. So I will spare their resumes and their backgrounds and just say that I have Cathie Mahon, President and CEO of Inclusiv, and Jim Nussle, President and CEO of America's Credit Unions. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, James.
I would like to just engage in some good conversation and have some honest talk about what's going on, your thoughts and your visions. So on a personal note, if I can start, I want to ask, what is your why? What actions inspired both of you to pursue a career in the credit union industry? And I'll start with Jim, you first.
Well, thank you, James and Cathie, and thank you so much to Inclusiv for including me in this conversation. I've been looking forward to it, and I knew we were going to start with this question. And even though I did, I have to admit, a lot of this is reminiscing back to when I served as a member of Congress. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know much about credit unions. There was not a credit union in the town I grew up in, and then the one that I was living in at the time I ran for Congress. I had heard about them, I'd read about them, I had been briefed about them, but that doesn't mean really anything until you have the opportunity to experience them up close as an individual, or to see their work in the community. And it was when I was in Congress that credit unions from Iowa, which is where I was serving in Congress, came out and they educated me about what they did, how they did it, why they did it. And I have to say, because as I know some of you know, these people that we elect to these different offices are extremely busy. They have multiple meetings a day. I easily, this isn't meant to be bragging, but you'd have like 10 or 12 individual constituent meetings during the day, and one of them might be from the credit unions. And so how you punch through a person's day like that and leave a message that is indelible and enduring is can be challenging. However, credit unions, along with a few others, were always able to do that. And in part, it was because of the just fantastic, impactful stories that credit unions were able to tell about who they worked for and how they worked and the difference they made in people's individual lives. And if that doesn't grab you by the collar or the throat sometimes, but certainly by the heart oftentimes, I don't know what does. So when I had the very nice opportunity to decide what to do when I was done with my career in politics and in serving in the Congress, I looked around, and credit unions were one of the ones on the top of my list that I thought, if I could get involved with that crew, I thought I could probably fulfill something that I wanted to be able to continue to do. And that was to serve. That was to be able to help people who are the people who are helping people, right? So that's how I looked at it. And that's my why. And I have to say, if that's my why, I have never been disappointed. I've never had a situation where I've thought, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or something like that. It's always connected with me, and I credit that to the people. Well, the people on this call, certainly people like yourself, James, and Cathie, and Pablo, and others that do the work every single day and have been doing it for many, many years, which I think is fantastic. So I'm just honored to be part of that and to be able to serve and continue to serve the people who help people.
Thank you so much, Jim. Cathie.
Thank you. And I'm listening to you, Jim, and thinking, great big shout out to the Iowa credit unions for not just doing a great job that day in sort of explaining their why and explaining how impactful the movement is, but also getting a lifelong leader for our movement. So that was an important lobbying day for them, and I think it's an important one to remember when we're going into our legislators' offices, that they want to be inspired. So that was really, really wonderful to hear. In my case, I started I was sort of very junior in my career. I had been working at I'd been working as a community organizer and a legal services representative in an immigrant community in Los Angeles, a Central American refugee and immigrant community during the wars in Central America in the late 80s, and had been doing a lot of work around civil rights and immigrant rights at work. And the LA riots happened. And in the community that I was working and very deeply immersed, following the riots, we had a lot of conversations about rebuilding and what did that look like, and what was some of the underlying tensions that were existing in that community. And I remember having like an aha moment when we were at a town hall meeting and people were saying, we were talking a lot about, well, your rights, and here are your rights about this and your rights for that. And somebody said, I got it about our rights, but at the end of the day, we need jobs. We need to have a safe place to save. We need to be able to, start a business. We want to be able to buy homes. And all of a sudden, that series of organizing events really took on a much deeper view of what people want to be able to move forward. And for me, it was pretty life-changing. That community ended up organizing a credit union called Comunidades Federal Credit Union, which no longer exists, but has become an important part of another credit union that still serves that area in Los Angeles. But it also set me on this lifelong pursuit of like better understanding that how we can be fulfilling on that promise. And I shortly thereafter went and got a little bit more education and know a little bit more about what I was embarking on, and connected in the mid 90s with the National Federation of Community Development Credit Unions and Cliff Rosenthal, which was the precursor to Inclusiv. So the rest was history, as we can say.
Well, thank you both for connecting the dots. I think that when passion meets purpose, it's so powerful and inspiring. Thank you both. Jim, in January of this year, CUNA and NAFCU merged to form America's Credit Unions. Tell me about the events that led up to the decision to merge. You're on mute, Jim.
That's a great question. I mean, I think that some of those conversations, some of those events, if you will, started even longer before I was part of the legacy CUNA, Credit Union National Association. I think that the history of this goes back into the late 60s and 70s, and there was a number of credit unions who were federally chartered that wanted to break away, and so it was first a breakaway for a number of reasons. And rather than go into that, I think similar to some conflicts that happen throughout our lives and throughout the world for that matter, we came to a situation not too long ago where people said, well, why are we split again? Can you remind me what it was what's our differences again? And our board members came together around that question, and they said, so tell me again, why are we fighting? Why are we two separate organizations? What's the value that's different? And there was some, don't misunderstand me. And I mean, if you talk to members, they will give you some anecdotal things. But it was really the positive side of that conversation. It was that, okay, fine, of course there are differences. Let's take the strengths of those differences and let's put them together with the lessons of the things that maybe we didn't do as well as we could for both organizations. And let's mold it into an organization for the future, which is not a 2.0, if you will, of one organization or the other. Let's build something new, and let's take this opportunity, this juncture in history where credit unions are as challenged today as they likely have ever been for a number of reasons. Some of those challenges are external, no question about it. Some of them come from government. Some of them come from competition. Some of it comes from a marketplace that appreciates far less the human contact, the personal connection than maybe they used to, and maybe want more speed and more apps and more online and more faster payments, things like that. And so all of that converged to say, let's do something for the future, so that 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, we can look back on this and said, it made a difference for us to come together and create a singular, united voice for credit unions, and that we doubled down on our most important purpose, and that was to be advocates, not just government affairs advocacy, because that's certainly what most people think of when you say advocacy, but advocating for a situation where people helping people, where financial well-being for all, where we can create that kind of personal and personal connection again that connects people who are oftentimes on the sidelines or on the fringes or are disconnected completely, and let alone communities that are becoming disconnected across the country, both in urban areas where we I think see them most often, but also in a lot of rural areas that are no longer the exit on the interstate and or even on the 2-lane, and are become really bank deserts across this country. So how can we be in a position to deal with those challenges on behalf of a very important movement? So those were the events. That's a long answer to, it was a bunch of people that got together and said, hey, let's do something different here. Let's create something exciting for the future. And in our industry, that's what I like to call cooperative superpowers. When people get together, they just cooperate. They say, let's do something new and different that solves a problem that maybe we haven't been able to solve before. And I think that's what happened when our two boards came together to do that.
Well, Jim, you talking my love language when you start talking about the superpowers. P6, I love that.
That's it. I mean, that's what we are. We're a Principle 6 organization. We're the cooperative of the cooperatives. And a lot of what goes on, I mean, you could talk about the GAC. I think a lot of people look at the GAC, and of course, that's the GAC, Government Affairs Conference, of course. But it's also a family reunion. It's a homecoming. It's a chance to solve problems. It's a chance for organizations such as Inclusiv and others to come together and network with other organizations that are doing either similar work or work that can be complementary to the work that Inclusiv and others are doing. And they can have a place where we can all come together cooperatively to do that. And that's what we think of when we think of the GAC. So yeah, we're a Principle 6 organization. And that's what I think we have learned throughout our history is important, is those cooperative principles.
All right now. And just for the record, so you can know, the member approval rate for the merger was by CUNA 94%, and MAFQ was 86%. So that was an overwhelming amount of people who decided to go in the same direction as you just stated. All right, Jim, take me on a ride with you. The year is 2034. America's credit unions is celebrating its 10th year anniversary. What are the accomplishments will you be celebrating at that time?
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a great question. First of all, let me just get it here. See if I can get it. So I've got this thing. That's the closest I've got to a crystal ball. So I can tell you what I might hope for. I can share you with what maybe others hope for. I guess the first thing I would observe is 2034. I know you know this, but I think about it this way. 2034 is also, maybe more importantly than what might be our 10th birthday, it's the 100th birthday of the Federal Credit Union Act. And so I think more importantly than what our association is doing, what are credit unions doing? And so whatever that answer is what we need to be doing in order to prepare the way for that and to ensure that they are as successful as possible. In fact, our mission statement that we wrote was that we're advocating for and advancing an environment where credit unions thrive. And that's what I would hope for as a bottom line, as we think about our 100th birthday, our 100th anniversary coming for the Federal Credit Union Act. How can credit unions differentiate themselves in a continuingly homogenized marketplace of just online apps and things like that, where everybody looks the same and frankly acts the same in financial services. How can we be different and differentiate ourselves? How can we attract a new generation of credit union members that heretofore have either not connected with us or have not felt, even if they tried, that that was a home for them for one reason or another? And we can debate and argue and think about all the different ways that that might have happened, but what do we do about that now? And then how do we ensure that we're creating an environment, of course, that's going to have a regulatory environment that's always been there. It's actually part of our value proposition, is that we're regulated and we're insured. But how can we do it in a way that allows us to be creative about that future and not just be the same old, in a negative way that either drives people away or is not attractive to the next person who believes that a credit union could be their answer. So those are some things that I think about. I just want people everywhere to be able to trust credit unions to help them solve their challenges and afford their lives and achieve their dreams. And those are the things we're trying to work on every day. But that's how I would see the next 10 years is let's make sure credit unions are successful and thriving. And what can we be doing so that in 10 years, on the 100th anniversary of the Federal Credit Union Act, that is true and growing.
Thank you, Jim. Cathie, as you know, you've heard Jules allude to, Inclusiv just celebrated its 50th anniversary. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I want you to also fast forward to 2034 and give me a sneak peek at what Inclusiv looks like 10 years from now.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. I feel like, Jim, as you were talking, I was thinking about, if I could pull from some of the things you were saying, that I love the cooperative superpower, and I love the using our cooperative superpower to solve the problems of the day. And I'll say, the Inclusiv is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And one of the things that we've done this year, and our board and staff have really gone through a process of sort of planning our strategy for the next 3, 5, 10 years. And a lot of that essence of like, how do we use our institutions and our power and our strength to advance and solve the problems that we see in communities and be the solutions. So, for the last 50 years, I think we have been very focused on raising resources, advocating for and raising resources and investment to build the capacity of community development credit unions to grow and scale and to be able to be sustainable financial institutions. And that's going to be an ongoing part of our work forever. But one of the things I think we've been realizing in the last couple of years, as the movement has grown and been scaling, we have a lot of members that are coming to us and saying, okay, so we're raising these resources, we're accessing these funds, whether they be federal funds, whether they be member deposits, whether they be opportunities in our communities. What are we, help us think through the strategies of how we can build our business and build our communities at the same time. And so when we went through our strategic planning process, we created a bit of a framework, and we said, what does it mean to be an impactful community development financial institution? And what does it mean to be impactful, to be able to use that that essence while also managing to the cooperative principles? And so we kind of came up with 4 major sort of strategic areas that we're going to be focusing on. The first is something that we have been working on from day one, and what all credit unions do from the day they get their charter, which is promoting financial inclusion, right? Reaching and serving people who, for one reason or another, have not been well served by other financial institutions and by the financial mainstream. And that's kind of how 100 years ago, or 90 years ago, credit unions, first began getting chartered, as they were chartered specifically to serve and fulfill kind of a niche in the market where people are not being well served. So financial inclusion is a really big part of that strategic framework. So we want to support and build and grow the opportunities for credit unions to always be finding those who still remain underserved, unserved, or could be better served by a cooperative financial institution. The next two are really about how do we use our financial institutions to be helping people move forward. And so the next two strategic areas were really about how do we enable people to build wealth by using the credit union to the best of their abilities. So that we put together strategies around home ownership and how we can help credit unions advance the ability of their members to purchase their homes, to remain in their homes, and to be able to continue to build equity and build wealth by home ownership, through home ownership. And the second is through small business development. There's more and more credit unions that are getting into small business, supporting the local economy by investing in entrepreneurs and small businesses that are right in their communities, and helping credit unions to really do that. And then the fourth leg of the stool, so we had financial inclusion, home ownership, small business. The fourth leg of the stool is recognizing that we are in a moment where we need to address the ongoing climate events that are affecting our communities. We need to be prepared for climate events. We need to be resilient in the face of climate challenges. And we need to be part of the solution and part of the infrastructure that's going to resolve and solve for climate change and climate crises. So we created, a whole focus area around climate and climate equity specifically. As more and more people are beginning to think about how we generate an evolving greening economy, at Inclusiv, we want to help advance that. We want to help reduce emissions. We want to help find those clean energy solutions. But we also are kind of founded on financial inclusion and equity. So we also need to make sure that as we're greening our economy, we're not leaving anybody behind. So our fourth area is really about how we can be building climate solutions and climate equity to make sure that low-income communities are central to any strategy that's formed to move us forward in a greening economy. So those are kind of, in our next 10 years, these are the areas we want to really see Inclusiv playing a role in supporting credit unions to build out their array of solutions around any one of those areas. And we say to our members again and again, you may not do it all. You may choose one and do it really, really well. You may want to do all four, but wherever you are, we want to not only get you the resources and be the advocate, we want to walk through that journey with you and explore solutions together. So we're super excited for the next 10 years. We think we can do so much together, and we're just thrilled for the opportunity.
Well, thank you both for those amazing responses. Now, I want each of you to take a moment and think about this next question, okay? When each of you are sitting in your rocking chair, drinking sweet tea, and thinking about the credit union movement, what do you want America's credit unions to be known for? And also, what do you want Inclusiv to be known for? I'll start with you, Jim. You can shake the 8-ball again.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I have to admit, though, James, if I'm going to be sitting in my rocking chair drinking some sweet tea, I might be thinking about my golf game, and I might be thinking about a few other things like hopefully my grandkids. And no, I get your question, and I do. I think true for all of us. We want to know, well, at least true for the people that I look up to. They always try and leave the place a little better than the way they found it. And I hope I by then will have done that and left a few places a little tidier and a little better. I will say that if we can, to Cathie's point, what a brilliant consideration of your next 10 years and a plan that clearly you put a lot of thought into together with your board. My board and I did the same thing, and we came up with some pillars as well that we thought were really important for us to be able to accomplish, so that as we look back, there are the touchstones to say, how are we doing in this area, that area? And I'll run through them because I think that probably will form the basis of my answer as I look back on. These are the ones that come to mind probably the quickest. So the first one is advocacy. And that is, as I said before, I think nowadays people are learning that advocacy is much broader than lobbying or writing a letter to your congressperson or whatever it is. Advocacy requires a surround sound. Remember the guy in the Memorex chair that sat there in the commercial? Some of us are old enough to remember that. And it's the surrounding policymakers with the sounds, the positive sounds, the harmonic sounds of what the credit union movement is doing at the national level, at the state level, at the local level, and most importantly, at the individual human family level and community level where people live, because that's where the difference really has to make a difference. So I think surrounding them with the advocacy and asking to be able to do more with that. This is what we've accomplished so far. This is the data points I can point to say, and we can prove that we're making a difference. And we want to be able to do more of that because, frankly, most of these folks that are in Congress share a constituency with us. We happen to call them members. They call them voters. And that's a synergy that I think, as Cathie was talking about, solving problems at the community level, they're looking to solve problems right now because they know government generally has had a real poorer track record on being able to solve at the individual level. Credit unions don't have that problem. Yes, Congress can put in a Social Security program or a Medicare program or something big like that. Yeah, and those are important. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying that when they connect down to the human being level, it takes another human to do that. And that's why people helping people and worrying about our financial well-being is so important. So advocacy. Second is, if we're going to do something as an association, let's do it well. I think heretofore there have been many associations that have tried to be everything to everybody. We know that. Cathie can maybe commiserate with me on this. When a member calls up and they say, "Do you do this?" The answer every association historically has said is, "Yes, we do that." Well, sometimes we don't do that, or we don't do it very well. So instead of me saying, yeah, we do that, maybe I should say, you know what, Inclusiv does that better, or a state league does that better, or maybe a for-profit consultant would do that better. But the point is don't try and be everything to everybody, because that doesn't help you with your resources. Third is we need to be a united voice. Now this is difficult because even families have friction, they have but disagreements, things where we're not quite completely in sync. And so I don't say one voice or a singular voice, I say a united voice. And I tell the story, my dad, who recently passed away, was a choir director for 60 years. And he could blend people who had different voices into something that sounded beautiful. That's what I'm talking about. We have different voices, different stories, different constituencies. How do we blend them? How do we continuously try and blend them into a choir singing the credit union song? Fourth is responsive member engagement, because we do have to be responsive to our members. And then fifth and final is that with the contraction of credit unions across the country, resources are at a premium, no different than they've ever been. But in particular now, we've got to be good stewards of resources. So advocacy, being relentless about that, premier association services, being a powerful, united voice for credit unions, making sure we're engaged with our members, and then using those resources as wisely as possible. If we can do those kinds of things, my rocking chair is going to be very comfortable. I guarantee you that, but I'll look back on it with pride. I will also guarantee you that as well.
My man, thank you, Jim, for that. And condolences on your dad.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Cathie, talk to me about Inclusiv.
Yeah. So yes, and thank you, Jim, for laying that out. And it's funny when you talk about how as an association you get very used to saying yes when your member calls. And last summer I happened to be speaking with a member, and she may even be on this town hall and will remember. And she said, Inclusiv, your team is great. When I call, you guys will get me those answers. Like whatever it is I'm asking, you will find the answer. But I'm not so sure I know what you do. And it was perfect. And I think the way you just framed it about, what's beautiful about our movement, and because we're all rooted in the cooperative movement and the P6 concept of cooperation among cooperatives, it means that we don't actually have to do it all or try to think that we're here alone. We are part of a really robust ecosystem that has so much more cooperation, both on the ground among the credit unions, but also within system partners and different supportive organizations. And I think our job collectively is to be able to make sure folks know where we begin and end so that we can be able to also share where our great partners begin and end as well. And so I so appreciate you sharing that. And James will know I should be very prepared for this question because James, as my board member, asked me this very same question when we started our strategic planning process: is what do you want us to be known for? And I think as we reflected and went through that strategic planning process, we really recognized that there's going to be still a lot of institutions that may call us and they need our help. We might, particularly for smaller institutions, for MDIs that are serving communities that would be left with nothing if they don't survive. Yes, if we need to step in and be supportive around operations and compliance and training and technical assistance, we still offer all of that in Inclusiv. But when we think about what we really want to be known for, we're doing that because the institutions, the members are so impactful, and we know how important that is. And when we want to think about what we want to be known for, is we want to help build a strong, supportive, thriving network of credit unions that want to deepen their community development practice. And our job may not be doing everything else that comes down the pike for, when it comes to running a major financial institution with tremendous pressures and things coming and all kinds of other, all kinds of services that you could be taking advantage of. We want folks to come to us when they say, we want to go deeper. We want to think about how we leave our members better off because of our products and services. We want to figure out where we're getting it wrong. We want to better understand who we could be saying yes to that we're currently saying no to, and how we then can sort of do that in a way that manages risks and make sure that we can do it responsibly and in a fiscally sound way. But we want to go deep. We want to go further. We want to support our members and communities and deepen our work. And I think that's sort of where we at Inclusiv really want to play, as much of a role as we can. And in the meantime, we're just so fortunate that we don't have to think that we're going to do a whole range of other things because we have this wonderful ecosystem that we're a part of. So Um, that's where we are, I think.
Thank you very much, Jim and Cathie. Jim, this next question is for you. What does the merge of CUNA and NAFQ mean for small credit unions?
That's a good question. I'm not sure it means anything different or unique that it doesn't mean for all credit unions, but let me try and put a little bit of a twist on that to just say that I think some of the most challenging times ahead will be with smaller credit unions, smaller institutions. And I'm not saying anything that anybody who's running a smaller institution on the webinar today wouldn't understand, and they're living it. I mean, I'm surprised you have time to be on the webinar. You know, you have so much going on, so much to do. You're wearing so many hats. You have so many incoming rounds of challenges that just the fact that you have time to whet your thirst and get some information is something I know I appreciate. So first and foremost, I would say it's having the unity of advocacy behind and the muscle of the entire movement behind you, number one. Not having multiple associations at the national level trying to sing off of different song sheets, being able to focus like a laser on what's important for smaller credit unions. I think those are the two biggest opportunities that I see out of the merger. And then second is the voice, being able to have a singular voice. There are two, and I can say this having sat on both sides of the advocacy table. There are some policymakers who take advantage of the fact that there are multiple voices coming in to talk to them. And they'll say, well, I heard something different from the last group that was just in, or this group, or whatever. And wow, you seem like you're in conflict. Go back and figure it out. Well, that doesn't help anybody. So, I mean, having different voices and having family discussions, we do that all the time. But just like my family, when we had a good old-fashioned family discussion like that, when we left the table, don't try and get in between us. I mean, we were unified. We had a fight at the table, but when we left the table, we were the Nussles. Good luck. And that was true for probably all the families on the call here, and I think that needs to be true for credit unions. So that's kind of the second one, is united voice and relentless advocacy. Third is a recognition about what strategically is going on in Washington. And I have to say, I am not a conspiracy theorist at all. However, there seems to be a push that is growing in crescendo toward bigger is better, and that smaller institutions do not have the same credibility. It could be a laziness on the part of the regulators. I've heard it termed many different ways, and I'm not sure I have a corner on the market as to the why, but I do think bureaucracies over time get lazy, and they like things to be, in a box. And if you're outside that box at all, if you're a little bit different, that raises all sorts of alarm bells for regulators and bureaucrats that they have a tough time, their head explodes. Well, every credit union is just a little bit different, thank goodness, and they're serving different people in different markets and different communities in different ways because people are different. And so having that ability to have the voice of smaller credit unions, not only to serve many of those underserved areas, is going to be key for the future. So on the one hand, they like things to be the same and easy to understand. On the other hand, I guarantee you the policymakers are trying to solve community challenges. So having minority depository institutions, or having CDFIs, or having community development of any kind, I think is going to accrue to our benefit, that we have people that can do that. And it's not just in the areas that they think about today. The ones, whether it's a hurricane, James, you know this. I mean, you guys, holy cow, you were open. The next day, people were leaving their damaged homes to come in and deal with members. We've seen that in other places around the country where it's the credit union that is the catalyst, is the place where everybody went to not just credit union members, but people from the community saying, we want to raise some funds. Who can do this for us that we trust? It's the credit union. So at any rate, I didn't want to get off on a tangent, but that's what we need to be able to do on behalf of smaller credit unions, because the big ones are great and they've got such great scale and they are blazing a trail for us, for all of us, in payments and all sorts of technology. That's great. But it's still going to be the smaller credit unions that are able to get in the niche and solve a problem that maybe other institutions are not able to do. So I think that's what the merger brings, is our ability to scale that as an association, to tell that story, and to get the kind of regulatory and legal changes to ensure that credit unions of any size, but also particularly smaller ones, can deal with that.
Outstanding. You alluded to this just a little while ago, but I want to go back and talk about the minority deposit institutions. Give me a little bit more about the fact that America's credit unions will have towards MDIs.
Well, I mean, just like no different than the NCUA, this is MDI Awareness Month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and we're participating in that. I think it's recognizing that that is a unique community that has had a track record different than some of the emerging communities where there are bank deserts now where there didn't used to be. I think of my small little hometown. It used to have 3 community banks. Now they're all basically, well, 2 of them are gone. One is still there, but it's a branch of a regional, and it's now 2 credit unions that have taken that over. That's a different story than a minority depository institution that has been there for 100 years or however many years, serving the need of a niche of a community that maybe was underserved for that entire time. And so ensuring that that legacy continues, that it can be broadened, it can be championed in other parts of the country, I think is part of what we are learning we need to be able to do as part of this. So I think that kind of increased outreach to potential MDIs, such as what we saw up in Minneapolis here recently, where the first chartered de novo MDI was established back just this last year, and or I guess it was the first of the year is when it actually happened. It was just so exciting. And the Minnesota League did that. I'm not trying to take any credit. We helped a little bit, and we've helped with some Native American experiences in the same way. But those are the kinds of things we need to be able to do more of.
Yes, indeed. I agree. I often tell people that we are in the midst of a financial rights movement. And honestly, financially, it is extremely expensive to be overlooked and under-resourced. Last time I checked, there was approximately 170 million people that were struggling financially. Jim, in your Nussle report, which I love, I've heard you champion financial inclusion. And as a board member of Inclusiv, Cathie, I can still hear you say financial inclusion is the vehicle to help everyone achieve financial well-being. For you, Jim, what collaboration opportunities do you see for credit unions in their journey to be more financially inclusive?
Well, I would start. First of all, let me just underscore one thing you said. I have, because I've been involved in politics a long time, I know we as politicians oftentimes we're coming up on 4th of July, where we talk a lot about our freedoms, and we cherish them. Please don't misunderstand, but you cannot exercise your freedom in America in the same way others do if you are not financially fit. It's just a fact. Yeah, you get to vote. You get to you get to be a natural citizen. I can. It's all in the Constitution. I know my Constitution. Don't get me wrong. But you don't get to exercise it the same way if you've got some of these other challenges and struggles. So to be free, you also have to be financially fit. And so I think that's in part what we do in cooperative finance, is we help people to help themselves be not only self-sustaining, but to be able to exercise their freedom. Second, I think the collaboration that we're already seeing and need to continue to see on this topic is wonderful. Where we centralize it in two places from the National Association side. The first is, of course, in our advocacy and in our united voice. We think some of the best stories we tell in front of policymakers. Karen Madry did this just a few weeks back at House Financial Services. What an amazing story she was talking about, and connecting the dots with some of the new policy challenges that we're having. So that's really important. But the other side is in our foundation. The National Credit Union Foundation is our foundation, and that's where we have housed two different parts. One is the database that we are using to help try and tell our story with numbers. How are you moving the needle? And if the answer is yes, prove it. And so using those numbers there, I think, is key. And then the second is, if there's a credit union that says, yeah, but I want to do more. I want to learn from another credit union. I want to learn from best practices or tools that others have tried and experimented with. Having a toolbox, a central repository for the tools people can use and borrow cooperatively to help improve their value proposition in financial well-being is the other area. So I hope that answers your question. This is so broad. We could spend the whole hour on this, but those would be the couple of areas I would point out.
You did. Thank you so much. Jim, you again. Speaking of collaboration, as you know, Inclusiv was awarded $1.87 billion to help unlock energy investments for low-income communities across America. Congratulations, also. What is the strategy that you think you can recommend to help credit unions create climate resiliency in their communities and take advantage of the greenhouse reduction funding that will soon be available?
Yeah, that is it's a great question. I mean, certainly I would start with congratulations, A, but B, I think Inclusiv is not a stranger to these projects. I mean, these are the kinds of things that have been done before. I mean, you did, what was that called? The Center for Resiliency and Clean Energy or something. Am I right, Cathie?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's an example. That was back, wow, it seems like a century ago. It was pre-COVID though, wasn't it?
Pre-COVID,
Yeah.
yes. We launched in October of 2019.
Yeah, so I guess rather than me tell you, you should tell me how I can help, because you have the experience. And so I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to understand. I'm willing to think about ways that we can be helpful. But I would be a very poor listener if I started that with a belief that I had the knowledge, because I don't. And I'd love to be able to help. And I know it's something the credit unions around the country have asked about, and I know that's true for your members as well. So I think you have a number of partners, and we're looking forward to how we can be helpful. But I don't want to hold myself out, James, as an expert on this, because just because I used to be the president's budget director doesn't mean I know every single nook and cranny of the budget. I know that.
Indeed. But what you have done is set up a great segue for my next question. Cathie, I want you to add some flavor to this gumbo. And I want you to recommend some ways that America's credit unions can be supportive of Inclusiv's work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll say that, I think, and thank you for remembering our launch of the Center for Resiliency and Clean Energy, because that really was, I think, the first time we did a big initiative like this, in which it was kind of above and beyond just the community development credit union movement. And ever since, the work that we're doing with climate is really work that we're doing across the board in the credit union industry. And y'all have been so very supportive. You've given us lots of opportunities at GAC to talk about it and engage. We work together in United in Sustainability. And there's just so many other ways that we've been spreading the word. And so this is a good moment, because we have, as the credit union movement, we have an opportunity to start getting and channeling out some really transformational funds. And it's, Inclusiv was selected under the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator with an award of $1.87 billion. $1.5 billion will go out in capitalization funding, and another about 187 million will go out in strict TA, technical assistance, that goes, out for the ability to train and to build the capacity at the credit union level to be lending. And it is something that, when we think about clean energy solutions, and I think at this point there's about 250 credit unions that have gone through our center's training programs and our deep coursework on it. And, what we always say is it's not like a new product or service. It's a lens across everything that credit unions do, right? So consumer lending, there's always households in needs of new appliances that could be more energy efficient, that could reduce carbon emissions and save that household money on their energy bill. There's abilities to retrofit homes that will reduce their energy bills. There's opportunities to do solar panels on homes that might help them be able to generate their own renewable energy and, again, greatly reduce that energy bill. So as we see costs are rising, energy costs are rising at a level much higher than almost any other sector of consumer products and goods. And so we need to be equipping our institutions, our members, but our entire network to be ready to support these kinds of solutions for credit unions to be able to, support their members to reduce that energy bill and help us find some solutions to the climate crisis. So I see Jules has arrived, and that must mean we're at the top of our session.
Yeah, we're winding down. James, did you have any final?
No. I just want to say that I want to thank both Cathie and Jim for their candid conversations. And as I'm sure our listeners did, I really enjoyed the time we spent co-creating this moment. Thank you for listening to today's Town Hall series, and I hope we can all connect again. Over to you, Jules.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Thank you, Jim and Cathie. I'm just going to briefly, I know we're out of time, but I just wanted to briefly share the upcoming events we have. And just a reminder, our CU Ops and Compliance team meets for office hours every third Thursday of the month, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. So if you'd like to register, please do so. And we'll be sharing the slides. And our Wednesday afternoon office hours, the CDFI open office hours, is meeting again tomorrow, and you'll get to hear from me again if you join in, because I'll be on that call. And then our next town hall session will be July 9th next month. So we look forward to seeing you all after the Independence Day holiday. I know we don't have too much time for questions, but I did notice Rebecca Hare from Brooklyn Co-op asked, and this is for Jim. I don't know, Jim, if you're able to respond, but Tom Sakash, who headed the small credit union community group for CUNA, was a real asset. I know you addressed the work with small credit unions, but I was wondering if you wanted to address that directly.
Sorry, I was off camera. Yeah, Tom Sakash is outstanding. In fact, this is one of those things where you do as I do as I say or do as I do. He is going to be running his own credit union and is learning how to do that, has learned how to do that by some of the best mentors in the movement. And you're exactly right, was an amazing asset, and we're going to miss him. The good news is that we're not losing him, and we're going to keep him in the credit union movement, and he's going to he is going to follow that 11th commandment and go and do as he's been saying to do, and hopefully learning from it and continuing to be an outstanding resource. And now it's our job to find new people who can help fill his shoes. And I think we've already done some of that, but stay tuned. We will continue. It's a priority, so we'll continue to focus on that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate
you.
that. I know we're at overtime, so thank you, Jim, for staying a few minutes extra with us today. Thank you, James, as well. And to Cathie and my other colleagues who helped put this together, thank you so much. I think we'll take follow-up questions offline. We'd be happy to answer anything that you send us, and we'll also be sending follow-up information, a follow-up email to you all in the next week or two. Thank you again to our guest of honor, Jim Nussle, as well as our star moderator today, James Hunter. Thank you to you all for joining us this afternoon. I wish you all a happy afternoon, a great rest of your week, and take care. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.